moving from one horror to another, that would be the orange bastard Donald Trump, on Friday at a campaign event in South Carolina, he said that, and I know I've talked about this before, and I know you're familiar with it, but it bears repeating. He said that black voters relate to his mugshot. The implication being because they're criminals just like him. And the 91 criminal charges in 4 jurisdictions just like him. Because, well, as Trump would tell you, Negroes know what a mugshot is like. Negroes know because they're all lawbreakers. So when they see this white demon with a mugshot, why, they're going to run out and buy a mugshot T-shirt and wear it proudly because, you know, black folk, well, what the hell? Reverend Al Sharpton on Morning Joe this morning explained why the orange bastard's remarks were so insulting. Quote, "Let's be clear, Donald Trump is using the stereotype of blacks being criminals, and therefore we would gravitate towards somebody in a mugshot. He's in a mugshot for trying to interfere with an election. Blacks were arrested to try to get out the vote. That's what the marches were about. It is the epitome of an insult when you think of the fact that it is a black man that is prosecuting him in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, a black woman in Georgia, a black woman in New York State Attorney General Letitia James. He's saying black people would relate to someone indicted for trying to undermine the election of blacks. But we would go with him rather than them? The other part," Sharpton went on, "the other part of this that is so amazing is Donald Trump himself has been part of these kind of unfair prosecutions of blacks. It was he that took out ads in newspapers calling for the death penalty of 5 young blacks and brown boys of raping a white woman in Central Park who went to jail falsely. It was later proven they didn't do it because of DNA. Donald Trump said, no, punish them anyway. All of a sudden, and I've been in this movement for 40 or 50 years, I've never seen him stand up for blacks that were treated wrongly by the criminal justice system. And now he's a symbol of being persecuted? He's being persecuted by black prosecutors, a black woman judge in the federal court in Washington. And shameless blacks are standing there when he made those statements applauding him? They need to check their facts. End quote. Now that last, what Reverend Al Sharpton is talking about, is that Trump made these insulting remarks in front of he gave a speech in front of a group of black Republicans. And I heard some of the smattering of applause when I listened to this psycho son of a bitch, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Now, of course, maybe I don't get it. I'm not a black man, I'm a white man. Maybe I don't, well, there's no maybe. Of course, I can't filter all of this through the experience of a black person in this country for the obvious reasons. But I'm no fool. And when I hear this shit, when I hear black people applauding Trump, I don't know what I'm hearing. I mean, it sounds like applause, but what is it? The garglings of some kind of a beast that Trump has turned loose in the population, and it's infected people to the point where Latinos will applaud him and blacks will applaud him and white people. Oh, never mind. Jesus Christ. And don't the black folk who were applauding him, don't they understand about the racist comments that the orange bastard has made against Letitia James and Fannie Willis and against prosecutors who happen to be people of color because they're black. And then this orange son of a bitch represents himself as a victim of persecution, comparing himself to the now dead Alexei Navalny. And he compares himself to black Americans who have been brutalized because of racism. Navalny, the African-American community, sick, grotesque. And yet there are people, black and white and Latino, who are applauding this degenerate demon. And he is becoming more and more unhinged if you've heard him, or if you look at some of the highlight tapes that are put together by MSNBC or even CNN, where his verbal gaffes, his getting everything fucked up, his lack of understanding of history or who's who or what's what. This is an ignorant man, yes, but he's also completely on the verge with one foot already into the compartment that contains senility. There he is. And people in the House and the Senate, white people, Senator John Thune, who's the number 2 Republican in the Senate, decided he's going to endorse Trump for the presidency. God damn you, Thune. This is, South Dakota just seems to produce some of the craziest fuckers, like this Noam, what's her name, her first name, who thinks she's going to be Trump's running mate, and John Thune. But Thune has been critical of Trump, like so many of these people. What happens to them when their brains are still working organisms? They point out that Trump is a threat, or Trump is a liar, or Trump is an insurrectionist, or Trump is a traitor. And then as soon as he puts the fucking evil eye on them, they collapse. Their bowels turn to water. They lose their strength in their legs. And white men like John Thune just collapse into a puddle of bullshit and say, oh, well, I'll endorse him. Gutless bastards. I can't believe these big old strong white men, man. I mean, you know, the power center, white Christian males. And when this crazy fucking psycho Donald Trump even hints that he's going to come and slap the shit out of them, they just collapse into a puddle of urine. They just lose it completely. And now big old bad old John Thune, huh? But it's just one more instance. Thune's collapsing and reaching upward to grab hold of something on Trump that he can, well, you know. But Thune's collapse, I mean, do you need another indication that Trump owns this Christian fascist party that used to be called a Republican Party? And since it comes after his so-called win Saturday in the South Carolina primary, just remember 40% of the Republicans who voted said, no, fuck you. You know, Trump talks, oh, I got 60%. I'm on my way. You're on your way straight to hell, you crazy bastard. You really are. Of secular hell, not this Christian bullshit. But when he talks about he won 60%, he doesn't mention the fact that 4 out of 10 people who voted in South Carolina gave him the middle finger. They don't want anything to do with him. But it's particularly notable, this endorsement by the number 2 man in the Republican Party in the Senate, because of Thune's vocal skepticism about Trump's strength as a general election candidate. and the role that John Thune plays in the establishment wing of the party. Thune was supposed to be, a Republican. I thought he was up until this. And now it's very clear to me he's just another collapsed Christian fascist. And it turns out, according to CNN, that Trump got on the phone with Thune after the primary was called in South Carolina on Saturday. And the senator told the orange bastard, he would be endorsing the orange bastard. And the Fox shit sewer was the first to report on the endorsement. Now keep in mind that John Thune is the turtle, Mitch McConnell's top deputy. And Thune is seen as a potential successor to McConnell. And Thune had backed Senator Tim Scott for president before Scott got on his horse and rode off into the weeds in November. And Thune said last month that he'd support the eventual so-called Republican nominee. But his endorsement, Thune's endorsement, comes even though he showed some misgivings about how the orange bastard is going to affect those down ballot races as the Christian Fascist Party tries to get control of the Senate. And this is where that 40% in South Carolina and the 40 or whatever percentage it was in New Hampshire and whatever the percentage was in the ridiculous Iowa caucuses who did not vote for Trump. This is where that's going to really show itself. Those so-called down ballot races with Trump at the top of the ticket come this November. Not only will he be defeated, but he's going to take the whole fucking House and Senate Republican Party down with him. And that's another thing that I've fluctuated on, this way, then that way, then this way, then that way. But now I'm beginning to believe that even though establishment media gives an awful lot of attention to this crazy son of a bitch, almost to the point where sometimes it feels like they're trying to normalize his insanity rather than just show the American people what our choice is this November. If it's Trump, it's the end of this country. It is simply the end of this country, and it may be a precursor to a real World War III, because if Trump wins, there are enough power centers on this planet that are strictly fascistic and who will not hesitate if they think they have an ally, another fascist in the U.S. White House, to begin their destruction of whomever they want to destroy. And I'll tell you something, you probably know this. The Chinese are nobody to fuck with. They have the biggest army in terms of not just manpower, but also of materiel, whether it's missiles or ships or planes. Like Hitler in the 20s and 30s, the Chinese have been slowly building armaments that even now completely outnumber anything the United States has. I'm not saying that as a means of saying, gee, we need a new arms race. Not at all. But I think it is very, very necessary to keep this shit in mind when we go to vote. With this horrible bastard Trump in the presidency again, countries feeling a little bit froggy may just jump at that point. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical Talk Radio Network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.